Quite interestingly, I am following all these experiences of Savitri, the experience of those different joys. I was surprised to have it a few days ago. I said to myself, strange, why am I made to see the joy in all those things? The joy of destroying, the joy of creating, the joy of laboring and conquering, and all of it. I was very surprised. And then, 19th February 1966, once more arose the great destroying voice. Across the fruitless labor of the worlds, his huge denials, all defeating might, pursued the ignorant march of dolorous time. The ignorant march of dolorous time. That's quite it. We're poor devils. That's exactly the state of mind I have been in for 2 days, but more particularly this morning. Oh, as an experience, it's very interesting. The spontaneous activity of matter is defeatist, the all-defeating might. It has to surrender. It has to annul itself so that a creative power, truly creative and victorious, can manifest. That's quite interesting. Theon used to say that this defeatist state, the result of which is death, this destructive power was born with the vitals infusion into matter. The rock, the stone, that is, the most exclusively material, isn't defeatist. The beginning of destruction came with the beginning of the entry of the vital force, with water. Water, air, all that moves. All that begins to move brings along the power of destruction. And in human matter, this destructive power is associated with movement. In other words, on Earth, let's limit ourselves to the Earth. It's only with life that death came in. And certainly, the first manifestations of life were water and air, the wind, weren't they? Fire, but fire, there's no fire without air. Fire is the symbol of the supreme power. Here's the answer. Truth does not depend on any external form, and shall manifest in spite of all bad will or opposition. I've written this in answer to this gentleman, death. It came with the power. Ah, you shall see. But I'd like to know what Savitri says. What does Savitri say? There's no time left. We'll see that next time. What does she say to him? I think she always says the same thing. The omnipotence of love. There you feel the force. Otherwise, it wouldn't be worth living. It really isn't worth it. It's no fun. 26th February, 1966. Behold the figures of this symbol realm. Here thou canst trace the outcome nature gives to the sin of being and the error in things, and the desire that compels to live and man's incurable malady of hope. But she will answer you. I'd like to know what she will answer him. If we follow to its end the idea with which Sri Aurobindo wrote this, death would be the principle that created falsehood in the world. It's obviously either falsehood that created death, or death that created falsehood. It's rather falsehood that created death. Logically, yes. According to the story, if it can be called a story, that Theon told, it was falsehood that created death. But according to what we have just read, death would be what created falsehood. Obviously, it must be neither this way nor that. It must be something else which we should find. Theon's idea, which also fits with the teaching here in India, in which they say it was the sense of separation that created the whole disorder, death, falsehood, and all the rest. Theon's idea was that those first four emanations, that is, consciousness, love, life, and truth. Love was the last, I think, but I no longer remember what he said. Those four individual emanated beings, according to him, in full consciousness of their power and existence, cut themselves off from their origin. In other words, they wanted to depend only on themselves. They didn't even feel the need to keep the connection with their origin. I am putting it very materially. So then, that cut is what instantly caused consciousness to become unconsciousness, love to become suffering. It wasn't love, it was actually Ananda which became suffering. Life to become death, and truth to become falsehood. And they hurled themselves into the creation like that. Then there was a second creation, which was the creation of the gods, to mend the mischief caused by those four. The story is told in almost a childlike way, in order not to be abstract, in order to become concrete. The gods are the second emanation, and they came to mend. In India and everywhere, they were given various names and functions, and they are found in the overmind region, that is to say, above the physical quaternary, the material quaternary. And the function of those gods is to mend the damage wrought by the others. And the region in which the others, the first emanations, concentrated is the vital region. All this can be translated philosophically, intellectually, and so on. It is told as a story, so that the most physical intellectuality may understand. But in principle, it's the separation from the origin that created the whole disorder. And, as far as I know, in India too, the Upanishads say the same thing. Sri Aurobindo, at any rate, says that disorder came with the sense of separation. So those are different ways of saying the same thing. In one case, seen in a certain way, it's a willed separation. In the other case, it's an inevitable consequence. Inevitable consequence of what? I don't know. Because, according to Theogonies, the gods have remained in contact with their origin, and they feel themselves to be the representation of the origin. As in the Indian theogony, which they say that Shiva is the representative of the Supreme, Brahma, the creator, Vishnu, the preserver, Shiva, the transformer, and all three are conscious representatives of the Supreme, but partial ones. It's perfectly obvious that those are only manners of speaking. There are indeed entities. They do exist, but it's only a way of telling the story in one way or another. It's the same thing. Metaphysics is also one way of telling the story, and one isn't truer than the other. But to me, the problem is to find, I am after the process that will lead to the power to undo what was done. When people asked Theon, how did things come to happen that way? He used to say that the first emanation and the next three separated themselves. Why did they separate themselves? He would reply very simply, laughing, why is the world as it is, in this state of disorder? Why is it like that? That's not the interesting point. The interesting point is to make it what it must be. But after all those years, there is something in me that would like to have the power or the key, the process. And is it not necessary to feel or live or see? But see, I mean see actively, how it went this way in order to be able to go that way. That's the question. What's interesting is that now that this mind of the cells has been organized, it appears to be going with dizzying speed through the process of human mental development all over again in order to reach the key precisely. There is, of course, the sense that the state we are in is a false unreality. But there is a sort of need or aspiration to find not a mental or moral why, nothing of that sort, but a how it got twisted this way in order to straighten it out. The pure sensation has the experience of the two vibrations, the false and the true, the twisted and the straight vibrations. But the transition from one to the other is still a mystery. It's a mystery because it cannot be explained, neither when it goes this way, gesture to the false direction, nor when it goes that way, gesture to the true direction. So there is something that says, like Theon, learn to be that way, on the true side, and stay that way. But there is an impression that the stay that way must depend on knowing why one is that way, or how one is that way. I don't know if I make myself understood. 26th March, 1966. Only the whole thing is that the time must have come. There must be only that left. All the rest spoils, whatever it is, even the highest, purest, noblest, most beautiful and marvelous things. All that spoils. Only that. The mother opens Savitri. There, don't you think it's marvelous? But when the hour of the divine draws near, but when the hour of the divine draws near, the mighty mother shall take birth in time, and God be born into the human clay, in forms made ready by your human lives. But when the hour of the divine draws near, 6th April, 1966. The mother copies out a few lines from Savitri, which she has just translated, and her hand scratches out a word. Constantly, the whole time, thoroughly amusing little things happen. It was a small hand, a tiny hand, that took my hand for fun and wrote, just for fun. So I have to be on my guard all the time. It was someone who was laughing and laughing and laughing. It's so living, so teeming with things, and we don't see anything. But I see. Previously, I didn't see, but now I see it all. The mother laughs. Oh, there would be so many things to tell if we had time. Very funny things. 16th April, 1966. The mother translates a line of Savitri without hesitation, then comments. You read here in the physical book, then you keep still, open a door, and it comes. It's amusing. I've just done that as if I had been made to do it. Usually it's always blank and still here, gesture to the forehead, and that's what it gets inscribed on. But just now, it wasn't like that. I read, it came here, then I made a movement backwards, a door opened, and then it was clearly written. 27th April, 1966. The mother reads 2 lines from Savitri, The Debate of Love and Death. Ah, it's still this gentleman. I had this whole experience a few days ago. It was so amusing. In vain his heart lifts up its yearning prayer, peopling with brilliant gods the formless void. Why? Were you in the formless void? I saw that, the formless void. It was so amusing. I saw it all. Oh, it was an extraordinary experience. All of a sudden, I was outside, and I can't say above, but it was above, but outside the whole human creation. Outside everything man has created in all the worlds. even in the most ethereal worlds. And seen from there, it was, I saw that play of all the possible conceptions men have had of God and of the way to approach God, what they call God, and also of the invisible worlds and the gods, all that. One thing came upon another, one upon another. It all went by, as it's written in Savitri. One thing upon another went by, gesture as if on a screen. One upon another, with its artificiality, its inadequacy to express the truth, and with such precision, a precision so accurate that you felt in anguish, because the impression was of being in a world of nothing but imagination, of imaginative creation, but in nothing real. There wasn't a feeling of touching the thing, to such a point that it became, yes, a terrible anguish. But then, what? What? What's truly true and outside all that we can conceive? And it came. It was like this gesture of self-abandon, the total, complete self-annulment, annulment of that which can know, of that which tries to know. Even surrender isn't an adequate word. A sort of annulment. And suddenly it ended with a slight movement, as a child could have, who doesn't know anything, doesn't try to know anything, doesn't understand anything, doesn't try to understand, but who abandons himself. A slight movement of such simplicity, such ingenuousness, such extraordinary sweetness. Words can't express it. Nothing. Just like this gesture of self-abandon. And instantly the certitude, not expressed, lived, the lived certitude. I wasn't able to keep it very long, but it is wonderful. But the anguished, but the anguish had reached its peak, the sense of the futility of human efforts to understand, to embrace and understand what isn't human, what's beyond. And I'm talking about humanity in its supreme realizations, of course, when man feels himself to be a god. That was still down below. The experience lasted, I don't know, perhaps a few minutes, but it was something. Only with the certainty that as soon as you come back, as soon as you just try to speak one word, or even if you don't speak, as soon as you try to formulate in one way or another, finished. Yet there obstinately remains a certitude that the creation is not a transitory way to recapture the true consciousness. It's something that has its own reality, and that will have its own existence in the truth. That's the next step. That's why that realization, the void, isn't the goal. That's exactly why. A conviction that it isn't the goal. It's an absolute necessity, but not the goal. The goal is something, the capacity to keep that here. Even in those people who were the most settled in their lives and basically fairly satisfied, as much as one can be, even those are touched. We'll see. We'll see.